no secret that these iPhones have become incredible filmmaking tools, especially over the last couple of years. But it's also no secret that because these phones are so small and lightweight, they have to have incredibly tiny cameras. And because they have incredibly tiny cameras, they also have very small sensors. And because they also have very small sensors, it means that it is a little bit harder compared to your APS-C sensors and full frame sensors to get incredible bokeh out of your footage. I've shot a lot of short films and other productions on my iPhone over the last year, and I absolutely love it. And today I wanted to share with you a few really cool ways on how you can get the most amount of bokeh out of shooting of your iPhone. That's that nice, blurry background look. Now I'll split this video into two main sections, hardware and software. Combining hardware and software, your footage is gonna look fantastic. And people are gonna be like, how did you shoot on the iPhone? You're such a cool filmmaker, you're like Roger Deakins. They don't say that, you just need to shoot more. But anyway, these are those reasons. Now, first up is space. One of the biggest things that I've noticed is that because the iPhone does have the smaller sensor, you do have a lot less in terms of visual background blur opportunities to play with. So if you are ever setting up a shot and you want to be able to get a nice, awesome natural separation between your subject in the foreground and the background, is that you really have to increase the amount of space that you have exponentially between that foreground and background. So for example, if I'm doing an interior scene, typically if I have an APS-C sensor or a larger sensor like full frame, I won't be too worried about how much distance it is between the background of, let's say, a chair and the back wall in a building. But when I'm shooting on iPhone, I always make sure to almost like double the distance that I would usually have, just to make sure that everything is in focus in the foreground and nothing is in focus in the background. A great way that I use to detect this is using things like focus peaking and focus assist in the Blackmagic camera app. It can really tell you what's in focus and what's not, but always at minimum double the distance between your subject physically and what the background is. You'll have a lot more success that way to start off with. So tip number 2 is simple backgrounds. Just like how you have them really far away, it's really important to keep the backgrounds as simple as possible. So if you have more solid colors and background environments where there isn't that much going on, it'll be a lot easier to be able to essentially have a more blurry look in the end. So pairing up those two things, allowing more space and keeping your backgrounds as simple as possible, can go a really long way. In the end, it is a creative thing too, so don't feel like you have to just keep backgrounds as simple as possible and as clean as possible. If you want to have textured backgrounds, go for it. It's just something that you need to keep in mind. The third tip, and it might be obvious for some, and that is locking your focus. Now, these iPhones are really designed to make filmmaking, video photography really simple as possible. But when you look at some features like autofocus, if you don't lock focus inside the Blackmagic app or whatever other camera app that you can use, often the iPhone will try and hunt for everything. So it's really important to try and always ensure that you select your subject. Let's say if it's a face, hit their nose or the cheek or whichever side of their face as close to the camera as possible and lock that focus so it doesn't move throughout your shot. You really need to be careful with this and make sure you lock your focus so no matter what movement happens, the point that you want in focus is always, well, in focus. Fourthly, and that's shooting in OpenGate. Now, I know not all phones natively support shooting in OpenGate. Some other phones like the 16 Pro and before that, and even the non-Pro phones, you need to use some other third-party apps. But if you do shoot in OpenGate, it does give you a larger field of view and a grander scale of an image when you are shooting. So for me personally, and this is a subjective opinion, it does actually improve on the overall focused look of the image. So although you might not have the same natural blurry background as you do in larger sensors, the actual image looks like you're getting a larger sensor look out of what is a very small phone. And lastly, my final hardware point is that if you do use external lenses on your iPhone, especially telephoto lenses, like for example, the Sandmark 58mm and the Freewell 40mm, if you pair that onto the main sensor of the iPhone, you will see there is a massive difference that you are getting a lot more bokeh, because these telephoto lenses ultimately give you a bit more compression and background separation when it comes to shooting. It does make a little bit of a difference too. So bring your subject as close as possible, put on a telephoto lens, or even just use the main wide, and the closer you can get that subject, you'll find the bokeh benefits are fantastic. Let's jump over to DaVinci Resolve and I'll show you some software techniques on how to get some incredibly good bokeh out of your iPhone footage. Now, there are two kind of ways that you can do this. To start off with, the easier way, and especially the less taxing way if you have a less powerful computer, is creating a power grade over your subject and then mask out and select the background only, so that way the foreground that I've selected isn't in focus. I'll then hit track to make sure that everything is tracked and the power grade moves alongside with the object as well. But this more so works when you have an object that is within its own standard frame. After it's tracked, I'll then apply a little blur on the background, let's say a lens blur or Gaussian blur or something like that, and that'll just add a little bit more bokeh onto there. Now, the more advanced version of this is pretty much the exact same method, but this time I'll use the AI magic mask. Now, if your computer is a bit less powerful, you'll find that it can be very, very slow. I love to be able to use the better version. You hit a few points on your subject, track everything through. It'll take a few minutes if your computer isn't as powerful, and then I'll apply the same blur on the background. Now, you can apply a normal blur, but my favorite blur to apply is using the radial blur. I'll change it from 0.4 down to like 0.3 to 0.35, depending on the shot. A nice, subtle, swirly background and not have your subject affected by it. It's really important, however, to make sure you're taking note of the edges of your subject, and you can use some power windows and some other tricks just to make sure that those aren't being selected, because you might get that ghosting effect. But it's important to keep this effect as subtle as you can, as you don't want to overdo it. And lastly, if you do want to go even more advanced than that and also look at a bit more of a paid option, there is this new plugin called Lens Node, which I have been utilizing a lot. This paired with Magic Mask will completely fry your computer, or at least you need to have a very powerful computer to do so. I use a M1 Max MacBook Pro with 32 gigabytes of RAM, which I'm looking to upgrade in the near future. The plugin Lens Node essentially enables you to replicate the characteristics of a variety of different vintage lenses. So if you pair that with using magic masks and other background separation tools like depth separation, depth mapping, and all those kind of really cool plugins inside of DaVinci Resolve, and you apply something like Lens Node on there, you can, for example, choose a Fetsor lens or a Helios lens or a myriad of other lenses and apply that look just to the background to get that really cool vintage lens look. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. And I'm really keen to see your shot on iPhone footage, so if you do want to share anything with me and get some tips, feel free to message me on Instagram. I'll leave all my information on the screen just now. But until next time, have a great day, stay safe, and of course, do take care.